As you can see, these aircraft look very, very similar, and there is a reason for that, which we'll go into very soon. Both tandem 2-seat. They're both with virtually the same engine. Both the aircraft types are inexorably linked. Of the aircraft, the wings look virtually identical, plain form. And now sitting for their individual displays. Tim Dugan will be first flying the T6, and because this machine was developed from the NA-16 as well. Australia didn't have big aircraft manufacturing facility prior to the outbreak of World War II, and quite a number of the CEOs of the large companies in Australia realised that we were going to need that if war broke out. We had sort of small runs of wood and fabric machines, but nothing advanced. So these CEOs got together and formed what they called the Commonwealth Aircraft Corporation. They started to build a factory at Fisherman's Bend in Victoria, right next to where the Westgate Bridge is now, and they sent a delegation overseas headed by a World War I pilot and a guy who was also an engineer. They went to Britain, tried to find something modern there. We were offered obsolete types mainly. They went to the United States, to North American, and North American was producing that NA-16. So they came back to Australia, said that they wanted the NA-16, and the government was horrified that we weren't going to buy British. Fortunately, Wackett had his way, and we got the licence to manufacture this aircraft, and also variants, which became very important. And we produced 755 of these down at Fisherman's Bend. They were used as a general purpose aircraft, also for advanced training here in Australia. And a number of them were actually on operations in the very early days of the war. 18 of them had been sent up to Singapore to help train pilots and convert them over to the Brewster Buffalo fighter, which in itself was obsolete. They also equipped number 24 squadron that was up at Rabaul when the Japanese swept across the Pacific. And a training aircraft with light 303 machine guns was absolutely no match for the heavily armed Japanese fighters.
Yeah, those Zeros and Zeeks and so on were a lot more manoeuvrable than these aircraft, and pretty much blew them all out of the sky. But one Wirraway, a very famous one, which I believe is at the War Memorial in Canberra, actually managed to shoot down a Zeke.
Yep, one of the 4 squadron aircraft. We had 4 squadron based in New Guinea, 5 squadron in the Solomons. It was flying near what they call the Gona wreck, a wrecked Japanese ship, and a Japanese fighter flew underneath it. The guy that was flying it, John Archer, pushed the Wirraway's nose down, and in one firing pass on the way through, managed to shoot down the Japanese aircraft. When he landed back at his base, the observer in the back actually jumped out of the aircraft before the aircraft had stopped moving. So the people on the ground thought that Archer had been wounded. But when they found out what happened, they sent a very famous signal back to their headquarters, and it read, "Archer has shot down 1 Zeke, repeat, 1 Zeke, send 6 bottles beer."
They must have been pretty frugal if they only wanted 6.
Not too much allowed up in the combat area in those days. But that aircraft, as you said, still exists. It's on display in the Australian War Memorial. This aircraft is painted up in the markings of a machine that was flown by number 4 Squadron. And this aircraft was completely rebuilt to airworthy condition by Sandora Aviation up in Caboolture.
I believe the original aircraft actually was in service with Flying Training School, had a forced landing at Wodonga in May 1943 after out of fuel, when the pilot became, as we say, uncertain of position. Lost. No, we don't say that.
The one big difference between this and the T6 or the Harvard we saw flying earlier on is that there is no washout. What that means is the angle of the wing doesn't change as you go out from the wing root to the wing tip. Now this is very important that that change takes place, because if it is not there, the wing does not stall evenly, and in low and slow configuration the aircraft can actually flip on its back, and not very good, because low and slow generally means when you're in the circuit to land.
That's the one, and that's when you've got no altitude to recover from that kind of situation.
So that was the reason why a lot of people were killed during the war on the training, but it is a much more difficult aeroplane to fly, the Wirraway, than the Harvard, so it is easier to step from a Wirraway into aircraft like the P-40, Mustang and Spitfire.
Well, this aircraft today, as we said earlier, being flown by Ben Lappin. He's from Gippsland in Victoria, but these days lives in Melbourne. It's got over 6,000 hours of total